Alright, thank God it's fantasy football season. I'm Buster Brown, and the show is Redemption Rehab. If you tuned in today, it's for one reason. It's to start winning championships in fantasy football. Today, we're talking about my top picks on the weekly waiver wire that'll help you get the job done. So let's head over to the weekly waiver wire report
and check out the facts.
Alright, here we are in week 8 of the NFL season. We're talking waiver wire. We need to find players to help you fill in positions for injuries or bye weeks. We're on our website, fantasyfootballredemptionrehab.com. We're going to help you fill your goals to help you win a championship. But first, we have to fill the holes that you have in your lineup in week 8 of the NFL season. So let's head over to the chalkboard
and check out the facts.
Okay, here we are on our website talking waiver wire week 8. If you're having trouble finding us, all you have to do is go to our website. It's right here, fantasyfootballredemptionrehab.com. We're here to talk about the waiver wire report for week 8. And you know we always start out with running backs. So let's take a look at some running backs that you should have had going in to week 8 of the NFL season. Like the Arizona Cardinals, Chase Edmonds. We mentioned him last week. He's the handcuff to David Johnson, and he had 27 rushes for a whopping 126 yards with 3 TDs and 2 receptions for 24 yards. Look, we've mentioned this guy for a long time. He's the handcuff to David Johnson, and if you had David Johnson on your team, there's no excuses. You should have had Chase Edmonds, because he's not only had a big week this week, with the injury situation of David Johnson, he could have many more big weeks to come. Let's take a look at some other running backs, like the Detroit Lions, Ty Johnson, the handcuff to Kerryon Johnson. Had 10 rushes for 29 yards and 4 receptions for 28 yards on 4 targets. Now that Johnson may miss some time due to injury, Ty Johnson will get some more playing time. But he's not the only Detroit running back you should keep your eye on, because we have another one, and his name is J.D. McKissic. He had 5 rushes for 29 yards and 2 receptions for 31 yards on 3 targets. He could also see some playing time due to the injury to Kerryon Johnson. Let me give you some other running backs you should keep an eye on for week 8 of the NFL season. Like the Miami Dolphins, Mark Walton. He had 14 rushes for 66 yards with 1 reception. We've been mentioning Mark Walton for several weeks now. He's probably going to take over for Kenyon Drake, who I hear is on the trading block. So, if you have Kenyon Drake, or maybe you just need a running back because of injury or bye weeks, Mark Walton is somebody you should have on your short list. Let's take a look at some sleeper running backs that you may want to consider for week 8 of the NFL season. Like the Atlanta Falcons' Brian Hill, the handcuff to Devontae Freeman, who may be looking at a suspension due to a fight he had in the game. Or how about the Buffalo Bills' Devin Singletary, the handcuff to Frank Gore? Or how about the Green Bay Packers' Jamal Williams, who we've been mentioning all year? And the last one I want to give you is the Oakland Raiders' DeAndre Washington, the handcuff to Josh Jacobs. All are worth stashing on your bench in week 8. You should always have a handcuff to your starting running back. It's tough when they go down with an injury, but it's much easier to swallow if you have their handcuff, which is the backup on the same team. So let's go over and take a look at wide receivers and some players you should be considering this week in the NFL. Some wide receivers that you should be considering in the week 8 of the NFL season are the Indianapolis Colts' Zach Pascal. He had 6 receptions for 106 yards with 2 TDs on 7 targets. He'll be a huge target on the waiver wire for Week 8. He is somebody that most people are going to be going after. He's probably on your waiver wire. We mentioned him a couple weeks ago and told you he may be a breakout candidate. Well, guess what? He had a breakout game. You should be looking for Zach Pascal on your waiver wire. Let me give you another guy you should be looking at on your waiver wire for Week 8. Like the Houston Texans, Kenny Stills. With the injury to Will Fuller, he had 4 receptions for 105 yards on 5 targets. Kenny Stills and Kuki Kute will need to pick things up if Will Fuller, who has a history of soft tissue injuries, continues to miss time. Let me give you some other wide receivers you should keep your eye on for Week 8, like the Cincinnati Bengals' Alex Erickson. He had 8 receptions for 137 yards on 14 targets due to the absence of AJ Green, who should be back after the trade deadline on October 29th. It's a risky pickup. I wouldn't spend a lot of money, but if they trade AJ Green, you might want to consider picking up Alex Erickson. Let me give you a few wide receivers that you may want to consider picking up this week also, like the duo from the Tennessee Titans, Corey Davis, who had 6 receptions for 80 yards, 1 TD on 7 targets, or AJ Brown, who had 6 receptions for 64 yards on 8 targets. Both stand to benefit with the emergence of Ryan Tannehill, who replaced the slumping quarterback Marcus Mariota in Tennessee. Let me give you a couple more wide receivers you should be considering, like the Miami Dolphins' Preston Williams, who had 6 catches for 82 yards on 8 targets, or Devontae Parker on the same team, who had 5 receptions for 55 yards, 1 TD on 10 targets. Both should benefit if Ryan Fitzpatrick remains the quarterback over Josh Rosen. I don't think Miami will win a lot of games this year, and they're not going to score a lot of points, but they definitely are a better team with Ryan Fitzpatrick as their quarterback. Let me give you some sleepers at wide receivers that you should be considering this week, like the Minnesota Vikings' B.B. Johnson, who's filling in for the injured Adam Thielen, or the Detroit Lions' Danny Amendola, who we've mentioned several times this year and is a possession receiver, or the Green Bay Packers' Jake Kumerow and Alan Lazard, who are filling in for an injured Devontae Adams, are all wide receivers you should be considering to put a stash on your bench in Week 8 of the NFL season. When we come back, we're going to be looking at the very hard to find tight ends for Week 8 of the NFL season. Okay, if you get a chance, go to our website, fantasyfootballredemptionrehab.com, and check over here where it says tight ends and how to draft your tight ends. In that video, we told you that this would happen. You would have trouble finding tight ends on the waiver wire and that you should get them early and often. So let's take a look at some tight ends that might help you in Week 8. Starting with the Minnesota Vikings duo tight ends of Irv Smith, who had 5 catches for 60 yards on 6 targets, and Kyle Rudolph, who had 5 catches for 58 yards, 1 TD on 6 targets. Both should benefit from the absence of Adam Thielen, who got hurt last week with a hamstring injury. If he misses any significant time, the aforementioned B.B. Johnson and these 2 tight ends all should receive more playing time and more targets, so they might be a consideration on your bench. Let me give you some other tight ends who will help you, like the Philadelphia Eagles' Dallas Goedert, who we've mentioned several times this year. He had 4 receptions for 69 yards and 1 TD on 4 targets. He's the backup to Zach Ertz, but he's going to be getting more and more playing time because he's a reliable, big target and he can block. So expect to see Dallas Goedert getting more and more playing time. If he's on your waiver wire, go get him. Let me give you some sleeper tight ends that you may want to consider for Week 8. Like the New York Giants' Red Allison, who we mentioned last week, who's filling in for the injured Evan Ingram, who had 2 catches for 33 yards, 1 TD on 2 targets, Or how about the New Orleans Saints' Josh Hill, who's filling in for the injured Jared Cook, who had 3 catches for 43 yards, 1 TD on 3 targets. Go back and look at some of these videos to the left of your screen, and you'll see that we warned you. Tight ends would be tough to find. Getting them early and often was huge strategy for me heading into a draft. So finding them during the season is like finding a needle in a haystack. So let's move on to quarterbacks. Let me give you some quarterbacks that might help you in week 8 of the NFL season, like the Tennessee Titans' Ryan Tannehill. He was 23 of 29 for 312 yards with 2 TDs. He's taken over for the ineffective Marcus Mariota, and I don't see him going anywhere. And the main reason is he can throw the ball downfield accurate. So I expect to see the Tennessee Titan wide receivers play bigger and better the rest of the year as long as he remains healthy and is the starting quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. If you've got injuries at quarterback or maybe bye weeks are killing you, let me give you some sleeper quarterbacks that might help you this week, like the Kansas City Chiefs' Matt Moore, who's filling in for the injured Pat Mahomes, or the Atlanta Falcons' Matt Schaub, who's filling in for the injured Matt Ryan, or the Miami Dolphins' Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's filling in for the ineffective Josh Rosen, are all quarterbacks to fill in for week 8 of the NFL season. You should always have a couple good quarterbacks on your team, especially this time of year when they start to get injured and there's a lot of bye weeks. So those quarterbacks should be able to help you this week. So let me give you some defenses that you should be considering in week 8 of the NFL season. We're back on our website, fantasyfootballredemptionrehab.com, and as you can see over here, one of the videos that I would suggest is how to draft a defense. Go back and take a look at that video and you'll see that I thought you should take a defense late in the draft and stream it the rest of the year. So let me give you some defenses that you should be considering in week 8 of the NFL season, like the Minnesota Vikings versus the Washington Redskins, or the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday night versus the Miami Dolphins are all week 8 streamers you should be considering. These two teams are playing horrible offenses, and they should be able to put up some decent numbers against these teams. But let me give you some other defenses you should be considering to hold on to for the rest of the year, like the Los Angeles Rams, the New York Jets, and the Indianapolis Colts. All these defenses have great matchups coming up in the next few weeks heading into the playoffs. I would pick them up and consider playing them the rest of the year depending upon the matchups. Heading into the playoffs, you should have 2 defenses on your team that you like that have great matchups in your playoffs in the upcoming weeks. So let's take a look at some kickers that can help you this week that you should have your eye on, like the Carolina Panthers' Joey Slye, who we mentioned from week 1 and told you he was a great kicker. Or how about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' Matt Gay? Both were on bye last week, and both are top 7 kickers in the NFL. When a kicker goes on bye, a lot of people have to cut him. It's great if you can get a top 10 kicker this time of year. In summary, thanks for coming to visit our website. Also, if you get a chance, please subscribe or like us on Facebook. We plan on being here every week to help you get the job done and start winning championships in fantasy football. I'm Buster Brown. The show's Redemption Rehab. Good luck.